And welcome back. We're talking with Bob Whitley about his brand new book, Attorney on Call, Lessons from a Life in the Law, a fascinating book that you can get free just by calling the 800 number on your screen or simply by going to the Whitley Law Firm website, whitleylawfirm.com. Bob will autograph a copy of his brand new book and send it your way. So Bob, in that first segment, we talked a little bit about you growing up in Kinston and the effect that your dad had on you in terms of work ethic and honesty and such. So now you've graduated from Wake Forest, you're a practicing attorney, you're just starting your career. What kinds of cases were you taking?
Well, Drew, I moved back to Kinston, North Carolina, and like I said, I was my first thought was, everybody's going to come to me. You know, I'm from Kinston. I grew up here.
Right.
And I found out very quickly that wasn't the case. You know, everybody had their lawyers. So I just kind of started doing everything. First of all, I applied at the community college to teach in night school.
Okay.
At that time, veterans could go and they were being compensated. And so these were adults with family problems, so that would, you know, hopefully be a source of business for me.
Sure.
I searched titles, I did collections, but probably the most important thing that came along, and it was really just a fortunate situation, and that is the federal government started requiring counties to handle child support, not only for those mothers who were receiving welfare, but for anybody who had a child with an absent parent. Okay. You know, in most cases it was the dad that wasn't at home, and so this was child support enforcement.
Okay.
And it was a new job, and I applied and I got it, and I think it put me in the courtroom a lot more and faster than I think I would have otherwise been. And I was trying paternity cases.
Okay.
If you can believe it, this is back in the 75, 76.
Okay.
And they didn't have DNA testing like they do now.
Right.
And they just basically, when I first started, it was ABO. So we were having a lot of paternity claims that were being contested. And therefore, you had to go to a jury trial. And they're some of my fondest memories. I remember, getting the defendant father on the stand and putting the baby in his lap and asking him if isn't it true that baby looks just like you? And there was really not a good answer for them to say. But one thing that we did that I'm real proud of, back then there was a 3-year statute of limitations for bringing a child support action for a child born out of wedlock.
Okay. And
if you didn't do it, then that child would never have a legal father and an enforceable child support from the father. And Drew, it just didn't seem right. You didn't have that for children born in marriages.
Okay. Or
or in wedlock.
Okay.
So why in the world, or how in the world could they discriminate?
Right. Why was there a difference?
The equal protection of the Constitution So we thought we had a perfect case, a case where the child was like 7 or 8 years old. Clearly the father even called the defendant dad, and dad would, give allowances to the child. And so I encouraged the judge to find that he was the father if he were to do that, but not force him to pay support because it was brought more than 3 years after the statute of limitation.
Okay.
So we got that ruling, we took it up to the Court of Appeals, and we had that statute declared unconstitutional. And I'll never forget it. I remember the few days later in the Kinston Free Press, the headlines were hundreds of thousands of cases have been opened in North Carolina because of a Lenore County case.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
All the kids that were beyond 3 or older than 3 years old, they wouldn't have the right to have their legal paternity established. But
and that story is in the book, Attorney on Call, Lessons from a Life in the Law, that Bob Whitley has written. It's free. You just have to call the 800 number or go to whitleylawfirm.com. Bob will autograph a copy and send it to you. Once again, this book is free, and it's great reading, Lessons from a Life in the Law. So, Bob, you were involved in some other case.
I was. There are a couple of murder cases I talk about that I was involved.
Yes.
In fact, one I couldn't believe that I had a first-degree murder case, and I was about 2 or 3 years out of law school. And but I'll always remember that case. Then I had another case that was kind of a mystery case. And to this day, I'm not sure that the jury did the right thing when they found my client guilty. But what I did. I discovered I loved being in the courtroom, and I was pretty good at it too. And you know, so we like doing things that we're better at than things we're not so good at. So I just did a lot of trial work, and I think I really got started with that child support enforcement job, because that put me in the courtroom every month on a regular basis, and we would hear 100 cases, you know, of contempt and various kinds. So, and then there was a friend of mine that I met in Kinston. His name was Bill Hayes, and Bill was one of these guys that was gregarious. Everybody liked him. He played hard. Everything he did hard. But he sold automobile insurance, and he started sending me cases. He got a DWI himself.
Okay.
And I got him out on a technicality.
Okay.
After the state rested, I stood up and I argued they hadn't proved ownership of the vehicle. They hadn't proved really that he was driving, because he denied that he was driving. So the whole thing was dismissed. And he never really understood it, but he told everybody that you've got to hire Bob Whitley. He stands up.
That's great.
And before you know it, your charges are dismissed. So he started sending me people that were in wrecks, handling personal injury.
Okay.
And I think of maybe the single most important thing that happened that kind of directed my practice to personal injury was Bill Hayes and his referrals.
You talk about what you call the trial from heaven, and that story is in this book. We're going to really get into detail in our next segment. But it's one of those cases that you said throughout your career just has stayed with you, that just is one of your fondest memories.
And it is, Drew. And when I tell the story, it is in the book, but when we talk about it in the next segment, I think you'll understand, and anybody listening will understand, because it was really important. And remember, the whole background was I was this young lawyer, and this family trusted me to do something really important that dealt with the death of their 16-year-old daughter. And you know, what charge could be more important than that? And I was determined. And I caution lawyers today, when you get hired, take a moment and remember that person could have hired a number of lawyers, and they chose you. So don't ever make them regret that decision. And that was my marching orders.
Attorney on Call. That's the name of the new book by Bob Whitley, Lessons from a Life in the Law. You can get it free by calling the 800 number or going to the website. We're going to be back with much more. The story about a trial from heaven is next.